Welcome back. This is International People and Culture Week 2025. We are on day 2, panel number 2. This is exciting. We had a fantastic launch yesterday as we kickstarted International People and Culture Week 2025. And once again, I want to welcome you from wherever you're joining us from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And very soon I'll say good night to you as well, but not for the next 90 minutes because we've got a fun-packed panel of experienced people and culture professionals raring to speak to you. So wherever you're joining us from, use that comment section in the LinkedIn space and tell us where you're joining us from, and say hello and tell us how you are making culture everybody's business, no matter where you are. We can no longer say culture, that's not my business. No, it is our business. We've got to make it happen. All of us are responsible. So this is the International People and Culture Week, of course, brought to you by the PCA, or the People and Culture Association, which is a membership think tank. It's got members who join us from different parts of the globe. And I want to quickly introduce you to the PCA. We've got around 600 members who have joined us so far. So please do join the club. You can join us either as a member or as a corporate partner or as a fellow as well, if you do a diploma in people and culture. But more importantly, the membership is free. The first category right there, free membership. So you can scan that code right away and join us today itself. And you'll be part of a club of people and culture professionals. Once again, we meet once a month. So it's a great place to network, great place to discuss trends and strategies and successes and challenges that we're facing. We often feel that this is a lonely space as we're trying to create culture change in our organizations. And the PCA is a great place to kind of come together and share those challenges and successes. So please do join us. The membership is free once again. And welcome to the PCA, as I say this today itself. All right, so I want to quickly introduce you to our speakers as well. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers today joining us on the second panel. Of course, most of you are familiar with David, but David Little is the CEO of the TCM Group and the president of the PCA, and of course, the author of Managing Conflict, Transformational Culture, and a soon-to-be-released book that is titled People and Culture, a Practical Guide for Professionals and Leaders. And of course, you can get to know more about these books. I'll be sharing some details in the kicker at the bottom of your screen very, very soon. So look out for that kicker at the bottom of your screen. But yeah, and David's going to talk to you a little bit more today about Quality Conversations Coach as well. A very, very interesting new segment that we have introduced at the TCM headquarters. But back to introducing to you to our fantastic panel. Nicola Kleinman is joining us from the UK. She's the Chief People Officer at ECA International, and of course, the Head of People at Your People Associates. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicola, on this panel. It's great to have you. Joining us all the way from India is Maitri Sairam. Of course, she's a People and Culture Business Partner at Free Money or FI Money, and we're really looking forward to listening to her insights from this part of the globe. Of course, joining us from Canada is Amanda Small, who is the Vice President of People and Culture at Nest Wealth. So really looking forward to get some Canadian perspective to what's happening out there. Joining us, of course, once again in the UK is Ali Mirza. He is the Director of People and Culture at the Barbican Centre, and in fact, the interim deputy CEO as well as the Barbican Centre. So really looking forward to Ali's insights as well, coming in from the UK. And from Zambia, joining us is Patrick Banda, who is, of course, the Director of People Operations at IHN. I'm really interested to see those perspectives coming in from Zambia as well. Thank you so much, Nicola, Maitri, Amanda, Ali, and Patrick for joining us on this panel. But before we get started, there's someone very important who's waiting to speak to you, my colleague at the TCM headquarters in London, or the TCM Towers, as we like to call it. I want to quickly introduce you to, let me get this thing off the screen first. Quickly introduce you to Lily, who is the Customer Success Manager at Engage Coaching. Engage Coaching is the sponsor for today's panel. And Lily, tell us what's cooking in the world of Engage Coaching.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi, Jonathan. Hello, panel. Very excited to be here. I think it's going to be a great discussion today. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the coaching that we do at TCM. And I think we're in a really exciting space at the moment because we're really driving coaching to underpin many of our other services at TCM, which means that my role is very interesting because it means I get to join lots and lots of calls with organizations. So I get the best gossip and the best information from all of the organizations. So, and this is something that we're really discussing internally, and how we can drive coaching to be step one. I join my lovely colleague, Emily, who is our customer success manager for mediation. I join on many of her calls, and we often see organizations being very reactive rather than preventative. So I'm just going to move. I'm just checking everyone can see the slides. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, David. So there are only two ways to manage challenges or even potential challenges, and that's reactive, which is firefighting, or preventative, which is taking action before the flames take hold. And often what we see on calls, conversations with organizations, is they always let the problem kind of escalate before we can actually apply something that will be useful. So these are some organizations that we work with that we think do a fantastic job of using coaching as a preventative tool rather than a reactive one. So we work heavily with the Met Office. They do a fantastic program called the Return to Work coaching program, which is very accessible for people internally and for anyone returning from maternity leave or returning from sick. And it just means that that is preventative for any problems that might occur later on down the road, any conflict, disengagement with the role. They're using their mindset, they're using their foresight to think what could happen before we let things get to that point. And that's what's so powerful about coaching. And I think that is something that it can be so beneficial for saving money, time, resources, and something that's so crucial that we should really start be thinking about. So we also work with historic royal palaces, and they had a situation recently that had a few individuals that they saw potential. They were fantastic in their roles. They were being set up to go into leadership roles. And before they promoted them, before they moved them forward, they took the initiative to give them leadership coaching, to give them that extra support. And something that we see many a time, probably a little bit too much, is that we see conflict between manager and employee, that difference in level. So this is something that's so preventative moving forward, and that's going to save a ton of resources and time and stress and keep everyone engaged and positive in their roles. So I would just like to go into a little example of how an organization could have saved a lot of time and energy and could have remained really productive. But unfortunately, they didn't use coaching as step one. And this is just an example of how this could have gone. So this was the reality. A department within an organization, long-standing manager left for maternity leave. A lot of the team had been there for a very long time, very loyal to the organization, really brilliant team. However, they were very rocked by that manager leaving. And by that manager leaving and a new manager entering, there was a little bit of tension, a little bit of conflict. We've all seen it. A lot of us are probably kind of relating to these scenarios, whether we've worked with a team like this or, change that can be extremely disruptive. This went kind of untapped for a while. This built up tension, built up conflict. People ended up going off sick. They called on us for a four-party mediation, but unfortunately, it was a little bit late in the day and it was not successful. And now that organization had to go into an investigation. So this was incredibly stressful for the business, and incredibly stressful for each individual, the manager, the people involved. You can imagine the money and the resources that were needed for this situation. Cost of sick leave, mediation costs. The estimated total cost for this was around 20 to 30K, which is a lot for a team, for a small team within an organization. It's a huge amount. So this would have been our approach if coaching is step one. If we got in our time machine, which I appreciate, we don't have that technology yet. Maybe at some point we will, but we don't have that technology yet. But moving back in time, if that original manager who left, they left, then there was team coaching for the team remaining. The new manager had leadership coaching and then embedded that with the team coaching, built on those skills. The team would then sure on the new manager's style of working. They could work together, they could move forward, create a new dynamic. Team coaching is incredibly detailed in that. And then a full coaching program, including the individual and team coaching, would cost between 7 and 10K. That's a massive difference. So I think that, this to take from this is that coaching is not just an expensive luxury or an expensive add-on. It is an important, necessary step one in any process, in any organization. So yeah, thank you. That was a bit challenging to get all of that out in a few minutes, but hopefully the message was clear. Yeah, I would like to pass back to Jonathan, and thank you very much for everyone's time on that.
Thank you, Lily. And I will be sharing your email address with everyone. So anyone who's joining us live, once again, tell us where you're joining us from. Say hello in the chat box. I see a few hellos coming in there, and I will be popping them on the screen soon. But Lily, thank you so much for the very quick presentation. I will be sharing your email address with everyone very soon. David, over to you to take this forward.
Jonathan, wow, colleagues, panelists, guests joining us for International People and Culture Week Panel 2, the 2nd of May, 2025. What a fantastic start to International People and Culture Week. But Jonathan, we can't start International People and Culture Week on the 2nd of May, 2025 without singing, well, maybe not singing, but wishing you a very happy birthday today, Jonathan. Happy birthday on week 2, day 2 of International People and Culture Week. Happy birthday, Jonathan. I hope this makes for a very fantastic present for you on your birthday. But thank you, Jonathan. Wow, International People and Culture Week, shining a light on best practice in the space of people, culture and leadership. And what a rich conversation we're having today. Lily, thank you so much. I love the idea of the preventative and proactive and the transformational nature of coaching. And I think we've had many conversations about all roads lead to coaching, and coaching leads in so many ways into so many areas. And I love this way you've used stories there to help articulate that. So Lily, thank you so much. So please do join the PCA, by the way. Jonathan shared the QR code, but we're only as good as the people who are part of the organization. And we love talking about this stuff, and we love being part of this new exciting movement as the HR function, as leadership moves into this more transformational space. And what I mean by that is a transformational space which is centered around justice and fairness, inclusion, kindness. I know that's going to come up today. Compassion, sustainability. We're here in a heat wave in the UK with temperatures a good 10 degrees above what the seasonal average should be here in the UK. And I know for many people, they're impacted significantly by climate change and the need for sustainability. So we can't ignore those factors as part of our thinking around workplace culture neither. And of course, when we start to aggregate these, bring them together, bind them together and connect us, then that actually provides a basis for high performance, flourishing environments. And that's really what the theme of International People and Culture Week is about. Culture is everybody's business because we're all part of it. The conversations in the corridor right the way through to the big corporate strategies all play their part. So today we've got a wonderful lineup of panelists. Each panelist has around 6 minutes to tell their story in any way they wish. We'll have some questions, and then we'll move around the panel, inviting each person to tell their story. And then we will stop and we'll have conversations. We're going to look at the LinkedIn comments to see what people are saying and what you're asking us as well. But Amanda, a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Lily, it was just great to hear about some of the work you're doing. And I think all of us are probably nodding either actually or inside, sort of saying, this proactive approach to really helping people, I say calm their nervous systems, just get people calm and open is so important. David, thank you so much for the welcome, and Patrick as well for inviting me. My name is Amanda Small. I'm very excited to be included in this conversation to kind of share my perspective about how all of us here, and I think every company is likely working on making culture our business. It's a really important part of how we do business. So Nest Wealth, where I'm working currently, is a digital onboarding platform for wealth management. In January of 2024, we were acquired by Objectway Group based in Europe. So I'm in good hands with all the Europeans on the call. And so we went from 30 people to 120 people during scale up, now to almost 1,000 people through that acquisition. And certainly in M&A, there's always some really interesting cultural integrations and challenges. A fun fact about me, I'm actually trained professionally as an artist. So that was my first career. I was an installation sculptor. And now for over 12 years, I've been a people and culture leader. I really work helping kind of early and mid-stage startups to build whatever they might need in their world, really using intention. That's a key component for me, blending that mindset of SaaS product, kind of iterative delivery with the creativity of an artist. I think that's kind of my secret sauce. And currently, as the VP of People and Culture at Nest Wealth, now part of Object Wave Financial Solutions, I really specialize in kind of building those connected, engaged communities. So in terms of what I like to do is really help teams grow and mature without losing what made them great at that 30 or 100 person phase, right? That's a really sort of critical piece. So when I think about what does culture mean to me, I don't hope it's not an unpopular opinion, but people and culture is not something we do. It's not something we make. It's something we uncover. So to me, culture is already a living, breathing thing that's there. The energy is there. And as an artist and a creative and a mentor advocate, that's really important to me. I really see it as a living, breathing energy. It already exists in the spaces between people, and it really thrives through our stories, our rhythms, and that shared meeting. And I think rhythms is a key piece that I want to talk about today. But culture is not policy or performance, although I think those things are tightly related to those rhythms in your culture and in having an impactful culture. But a little woo-woo here, but I think it's the aura, right? It's really how you are together. It's those spaces in between and how people feel when they walk in a room and what happens in those kind of critical and I think built behaviors, attitudes, and actions when no one's watching, when you're not in a performance review, when you're not in a meeting with leadership. And one of my favorite quotes from Thomas More, I think I've used this before in a podcast, so anyone who's tuning in from Canada, sorry, but I love this quote, but soul is not a thing, but a quality or dimension of experiencing life and ourselves. And I really think that culture, needs tending, it needs uncovering, it needs surfacing, and not control. It needs curation. So as a practitioner, really my role in culture is part facilitator, part listener, and part artist. I get to build, I get to create, and really try to help kind of uncover and amplify what already lives in that collective energy of the organization. And what I help do is really align that with purpose, not forcing it into form. As a sculptor, I have all these, memories of just really working so hard to make something into something that I wanted, and it had to be perfect. And the more control I put on the piece, the worse, the worse it got. So a lot of times there was that moment for kind of the authentic and true nature of something to come out. You have to be aligning to what is that bigger vision, and can I kind of cultivate that rather than control it. So one of the topics that we were sort of asked to speak about is how are we making culture everyone's business and really embedding that into our workplaces. So again, I just want to say, I just believe that culture isn't owned by one person. I don't do culture, even though in my title is people and culture. I think it is a collectively experienced, shaped, and carried by everyone. So, when someone says, but you own culture, I always pause and say, well, actually, it's a collective agreement between us, particularly in our behaviors and our leadership and our purpose, kind of that collective agreement in motion. So at Nest Wealth, we've moved from sort of a centralized administrative HR function to a distributed culture model, and really leveraging my team as SMEs. They're subject matter experts in the business and strategy of culture. So from talent acquisition to talent management to operational excellence, which is almost always overlooked, but so critical to leadership, here are some of the ways that we sort of creatively make culture everyone's business. So I think all of us know this, like turning your values into everyday behaviors, really translating your success traits, your values, whatever that is, whatever you call it, into your behavioral pillars, those things that we expect or notice when we walk in the room, the things that we celebrate, really translating those into a clear and shared language, not just, words on the wall, not posters or things we send out, not just on a performance review. How did you exemplify this, this value, but real stories and everyday rituals that kind of bring them to life. So I think about things like, having a shout out channel, really, I think investing in recognition as an everyday behavior, but not something we do at specific times, having values winners, and then of course, embedding them into performance reviews and growth and development planning. I think making people and culture a strategic partner, not a gatekeeper, is really, really important. Our people and culture team are treated as SMEs in the business, and they are subject matter experts in the business and the strategy of culture. So really allowing them to bring their strengths to the table and work very deeply with our divisions and our leaders as, an HRBP, as that strategic partner, bringing the value they can to the business. Equip your leaders as culture carriers. I think, we sort of miss out. Lily, you touched on this, but, your people managers, your middle line managers are the keys to your kingdom. They really are the ones who are going to implement, carry, build the behaviors that you want. They're going to be the ones embedding culture, the culture you want into your business. And we kind of overlook them. I think we focus a lot on our senior leadership, and we focus a lot on our people, but that layer, really designing your training, your tools, having real-time support to empower them, reinforce them, and role model those cultural experiences, I think is critical. And then I already mentioned this, but just really celebrating those micro moments, highlight the small stuff, how every person at any time shouted out if they lived a value in a team meeting, or how a quiet leader helps someone feel really included. These micro moments are the signal that culture is present, and really kind of living in every interaction. So I think, using that real-time opportunity to give those shout outs builds a really strong and kind of connected culture. And we don't build culture, right? We invite people into the culture, and we try to really build programs and processes that align that culture to what we want.
Wow. Amanda.
Okay. Wow.
Goodness, I've been scribbling away. My pencil's gone blunt.
I 6 minutes.
I love those moments that matter as well. They are just a fantastic space to kind of shape and nurture that culture.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. It becomes very personal. It's about us, and it's our feelings and how we connect. And I love that sense of personalization and almost that kind of curation of culture. And I heard you talking about culture and I love the artistic, the art, the science, and the craft of culture. And I think when I've worked with so many people teams over the years, there's almost the science, there's a sort of technological science behind this stuff, and it's kind of process led. But I love the way you bring that art and the craft to this as well. And I just wondered, I had so many questions, and that strategic life, the idea of the people functioning as the table, not seeking to be at the table, becomes the table itself. But I just wondered, can I go back to the art, the craft, and the science of the people function, and that sort of that ethos that you bring to this? Did you find you had to give anything up from HR to being a people and culture leader? And if you did you have to stop doing anything? Were there any bad habits or things that were getting in the way that you had to stop doing to release this energy that you've described so beautifully?
Well, I think the biggest thing is when you come in at an early stage, and anyone who's gone into startup, right? This is when you're maybe at your Series A, maybe you are even at a seed round funding. What you're actually doing is undoing some bad behaviors. You're undoing behaviors. So you're kind of undoing and then reweaving or rewiring folks to how we want to be, to prepare for that next leap, that scale up. And so, yes, I have to challenge myself all the time, as a human being, we do have automatic ways we respond. I think I've also really learned, but which I think comes from my creative practice, to really challenge what I know to be right. Oh, I've done this here. Oh, I should map that process right over. When we do that, I think we lose a little bit of that authentic, intentional design, where we're really saying, if we think like product, even if we've built a product a million times, we want to go in and really say, what is the market saying? What is the client saying? And then we're iterative. We're trying stuff out. We're testing and saying, did it fit? Oh, wow, what I did last time didn't fit. So that I will admittedly say I become challenged by, because I like, as somebody who's been in 12 years, I like to say, like, I know my stuff. I've done this. And really, I think the psychological shift there, and truly sort of a capacity and leadership shift, is being able to say, okay, I have done this before, but what will work in this situation? And really listening for, an authentic kind of response to who the company is and what their purpose is. That's very different than sort of saying, I've done this and I'm going to do it the same each time.
Absolutely. And yet that cookie cutter approach to people, it doesn't work. It's never worked, and it kind of will never work, because everyone's so unique and so brilliant and so amazing and special. That having that kind of, it's the process, and we have that cookie cutter approach. So designing and crafting and developing these people-centered kind of solutions is so key. And I love some of the language you use. You set the bar high, Amanda. Thank you. I can see you've got some wonderful comments, and I'm sure you'll have a look at the feedback and the comments that are coming through. But we're going to dig into this even more. But Ali, I'd like to thank you, Amanda, by the way. Thank you so much. And Ali, Director of People and Culture at the Barbican Centre in London. Ali, it's a chance for you to explain kind of the work you're doing, and how do you help bring culture, make culture everybody's business. Ali, thank you. And Ali, over to you.
Thank you so much, David. And yes, the bar has been set high. Thank you, Amanda. I'm not sure whether I should, but that was amazing, and I've learned a lot. And so thank you. I do feel so privileged, and it kind of lines up with just the comment I made about Amanda, but to be sat on a panel with such esteemed colleagues like yourselves across different time zones. And I'm so looking forward to learning from you all, but also those that are viewing. So as I was thinking about how to approach this topic, and not wanting to duplicate some of the wise words from the panel, I wanted to go slightly left field, as much to test my own hypotheses, but also get perspectives. And you'll hear a common theme from me about learning and my learning journey, and because we're learning as we're going, right? So it's important for me to kind of express that. So let me throw some lines that you'll all be familiar with, but keep them in mind as we move through my conversation, more as a provocation to the conversation. So we've heard culture eats strategy for breakfast, the famous Drucker line, which is commonly cited. We've heard that 70% of change projects, culture projects, fail, right? So that's something that we've heard. And we've heard the line about culture, the culture journey is a marathon, not a sprint. So those are things that just wanted to keep front of mind. So let me go through my journey, my learning journey in this space. And it's important framing, because I think for all of us, it's unique. We've been on this journey, and it's a unique journey, but I wanted to share some of that because it frames the conversation that I'll have with you. So my background, I started as a civil engineer. I mean, back in the day, not an artist like Amanda, but a civil engineer. But if you think about it, it seems so wild that I'm here talking about people and culture when I started out. But is it? Is it strange? Think about the hard skills you need: taking action, designing, looking at stresses and strains based on form, function, and environment you work in. So those are things that you need to reflect on. I've worked in local government as a transformation lead, different decision makers, networks, unions, stakeholders, different agendas and objectives that you need to kind of ply on. Move from there to becoming a management consultant for one of the big four. deep listening, problem solving, building stakeholder relationships, working in different organizations made me realize that there is no cookie cutter. There is no one size fits all that we mentioned. You have to adjust, you have to align, flex, and identify what would work best, then take stakeholders on that journey. Move from there to the corporate sector, and there are a couple of organizations I worked for. Telefonica, 36 countries, 165,000 employees, international hubs. So how do you align all of those organizations, those intricate working cultures around one culture? And one of my learnings was you need to understand the incredible positives of diversity, through those different working environments. Peru was very different to Argentina. Spain, their corporate HQ was very different to the UK. How do you navigate all of those interesting conversations that you subsequently need to? And then HSBC, again, international, but coming off the back of the financial crisis that created a complex, challenging internal culture with different motivators. So again, that thing about agility and understanding the context from within which you're working. So from the corporate sector, I felt I needed a career change and entered the not-for-profit charity sector, Cancer Research UK, a purpose-led organisation with a mission of bringing forward the day when all cancers are cured. And it's interesting because while a strong purpose-led organisation, that did influence where power sat. So in this case, via the science, and then subsequently the behaviours that follow. So it's important as we're navigating through the organizations that we're in, identifying where power sits is quite an important one, because you need to navigate that tricky sometimes challenge. And finally, where I am now, the Barbican. For those that don't know, it's a global arts and culture environment. And Amanda might knock on your door from your artistic background, set within a brutalist architecture built after the Second World War. So if you haven't been, you have to come. Beacon of art and culture with 3 cinemas, 2 art galleries, concert hall, theatre, conservatory with over 1,500 species of plant, a library, 6 food and beverage outlets, retail shops. We have over 1.5 million visitors per year, 700 members of staff, 350 permanent staff, 350 casual. Again, context. Context is important, so you'll hear me talk about that. Sounds amazing, but it was only a few years ago that the organisation that does sit within the City of London had widely publicised cases of institutional racism and systemic racism. There were cases of bullying, deep trust issues between staff and management. So my role was created as a consequence of that, and our team has been on a journey for the last couple of years on cultural transformation, change. And there were outcomes that needed to focus on rebuilding trust, creating space for voices to be heard, taking affirmative action, taking difficult decisions. That meant a few people left the organization, but there were smaller, quicker wins, or they may seem small, but things like, for instance, we've got we've got this corridor where our directors used to sit. It's called the directors corridor. Now it's called the garden corridor. We've converted some of the space into collaboration spaces. We've got a network room that used to be the former COO's role. Small things, but they signal intent, signal change. So it's been an exciting journey. And the point that I was kind of referencing there was that, yes, it's a marathon and it's a long haul, but there are cultural sprints that you can enforce and kind of present change. If ever there was a time in the arts and culture world, just a plug for the arts and culture space, if ever there was a time for voices to be heard with what is going on in the world through platforms such as ours, it is now. And David mentioned sustainability, but the global noises around EDI, etc. We need vehicles like ours to kind of make sure those voices are heard. So I'm more, mindful. So just summarizing then, what I'm hoping to unearth is the need to adapt, need to flex. We need to be able to draw on toolkits for sure, but be flexible. So why bring this up? Well, our focus needs to adapt according to the environment and context that we sit in. What was right for Telefonica would not be right for the Barbican or HSBC. I'm also mindful of the roles that we as professionals need to play. A doctor diagnose and identify how to treat, maybe draw on a triage kind of situation. A psychologist that motivates and demotivates. A scientist ways things happen and why, being actively curious. This may sound strange, but an astrologer foreseeing things. An engineer builds structures and strong foundations, and a conductor responsible in bringing many pieces together. But artists, Amanda mentioned artists, but how do you draw on that creative energy in an organization? So it's an incredible environment to play in, but requires a range of disciplines, empathy, emotional intelligence, humility, and a mix of hard and soft skills. So in conclusion, let's believe in ourselves. We are many things. We have many strengths. Let's draw on our individual and collective qualities. I believe we ought to be the CEOs of the future and step into those leadership organizations. Why is it that finance and audit normally get those roles? What are we but businesses, as businesses and organizations, other than vehicles to get the best out of one another in order to achieve the outcomes of an organization? I'm blessed that I'm the interim deputy CEO at the organization like ours, but I'm looking forward to seeing many, many more. But thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak here.
Wow. Yeah, well done. Thank you, Ali. That was amazing. What an amazing journey you've had in the space, from civil engineering through so many sectors and spaces, and coming into the Barbican, as you very candidly shared there, in a time of challenge. And I know when I've seen cultural audits, I do these cultural audits. I go in and I see these, and I see different responses. I kind of go back to Lily's response a little bit, I think, in terms of coaching. There's the reactive. And that's kind of sometimes the response, Ali, where we kind of have more rules, more policing, more processes, more oversight, more governance, more compliance. And that's almost, it kind of gives the outward appearance we're doing something, but actually what it does is it creates more fear and uncertainty. There's the other response, of course. There's the people-centered approach, creating spaces for voices to be heard and to listen and to hear. I just wondered, Ali, could you share from your experience of the Barbican, having started at the base that you described a short while ago, what have you seen happening within the organisation, and do you feel the people and culture work that you've done has created this sense of an inclusive, a fair workplace where that diversity is celebrated? You've taken the adversity out of the diversity and replacing that with learning and connection. And I just wonder, Ali, if you could sort of shine a light on that piece of work within the Barbican since you joined.
Sure, David. I mean, it's a great question, and part of it responds to something that Amanda said that resonated with me around. It's not about policies and practices that you write down, and you've mentioned it as well, David. It's about the actions you take. Some may seem small, and I've mentioned some of the things that we did. We now have 5 networks, for instance, creating space for voices and allowing those networks not just to be separate networks for their own, but for the benefit of the organization. They now come to board meetings on a quarterly way. They come to our executive leadership conversations. We've got our first, I know it sounds very, it may sound odd, but we've got our own first ever people engagement survey, and that's incredible. But it's not just about hearing through that survey. And we know this, it's the action that you subsequently take, right? So, and these are, those then give, work on that trust equation between staff and employees. If they see things happening, you're kind of biting at that challenge that has always been there when there have been those trust issues. it's going to take time, and we're sensing quite a move. We're inspired by the environment that we work within and the opportunities that we all have. We've got a strong ethical compass. We've got very activist staff colleagues that live and breathe what's going on in the world, and wanting us, as we're working in the arts and culture space, to demonstrate what we have. So we've got things, common things to pull on. So, and that's what we've been doing.
I think it sounds so fun. I think we're going to come back to this as well, because as you said in earlier as well, I think we could probably all see this. The sort of the DEI focus is being examined through very strange lenses at the moment, but you're talking about the value, the intrinsic value to our organizations and to our people and to the spaces. It's a very sort of, you describe it as more like a place-based environment for us to thrive through that space of creating inclusive, safe, supportive environments where we can have our voice heard and feel valued and connected. And it's just so profoundly powerful. I want to kind of dig into that some more, Ali, and I think we'll do that, because I think this thematically I want to be able to do. But Ali, thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us as well today. And Jeanette, welcome back. I can see some of you who were on yesterday's session. Welcome back if you're on yesterday's panel as well. Fantastic to have you back. If you're new, I can see Patrick, you've introduced a number of people, because there's a lot of people name dropping you, Patrick, in the comments section, saying that. So you passed the message on. So Patrick, to you, thank you for your one-person PR campaign for today's panel. Thank you so much. Thank you wherever you're joining us from. It's so fantastic to have you here, and a great conversation. Ali, amazing. Thank you so much. Maithri, hello, how are you?
Hello, so glad to be here. Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
We're glad to have you too, Maithri. Well, over to you. How are you making culture everybody's business, Maithri?
Awesome. So I think after hearing Amanda and Ali, just the amazing work they're doing as, people leaders, is just awesome. I try to put whatever, I've experienced in the last couple of years building a startup. I could relate so hard to what Amanda was saying. I thought I'll structure my conversation, because I felt like I could go all over the place when it comes to culture. So I do have a couple of slides that, I'd love to present. Just give me a second. Yeah. Are you able to see it?
It will just take a second. There's always a bit of a lag, but they will appear, Maithri. Hopefully it is. There we go. They're starting to appear now, Maithri. They've appeared now. They're visible.
Awesome. So I thought I'd quickly go over just the journey that, I've been in. I'm working with this company called FiMoney. We're a fintech company based out of Bangalore, working towards maximizing people's financial potential. And I think, like Amanda said, like Ali said, I think especially when you're in a startup, the kind of pace that you're at is just crazy, right? So when I joined the startup, we were just about 15 people, and culture literally was everyone, right? Everyone was a part of making policies and benefits, and they all were integral in figuring out what we behave, how we discuss, how we talk. Everything was about everyone being together. And then, the interesting thing that happened was, COVID hit, and this was just about 2-3 months of us being in, and we surged in growth. We had to hit a lot of numbers, business grew, and we went from a team of 15 people when we started pre-COVID to about 200 people. And through all this time, all of us were reporting into just our leadership team, like the 5 founding members, and it was just crazy. All of us were trying to replicate, trying to be a part of culture, make culture, and at the same time we were growing so quickly. And I think that's when it hit in terms of what people and culture really meant on the floor in terms of building culture, right? We were not owning culture. What we were doing was we were trying to be on the floor. We were asking questions. We were listening. We were trying to understand what the floor was feeling. We then really build all of this into practices, into rituals, into rhythms, like Amanda had mentioned. And then we go back and we repeat, because things are changing so quickly. What you think you built literally a month ago might not be as relevant as you thought it would be, just 2-3 months later. And what we did then is we tried to reflect on what's working, what's not working, what really changed, right? So we went back, and for a company of about 5 years old, we had people stay for about 2.5 to 3 years, and a lot of these people were our culture ambassadors, people we really wanted to be seen as role models, right? And we tried to understand, okay, what made these guys, what made them stay? right? And I kind of tried to bring in, my psychological perspective of sorts here in terms of understanding what really made them stay, right? There were three key things that kept coming up in our pulse surveys, in our conversation, exit interviews, all of this, right? Three things that also make people really motivated to stay: autonomy, relatedness, and competence, right? Autonomy in terms of I own my work. What we tried to do was we created rituals and practices unknowingly to create areas where people could really take charge of their own work. They felt like they could take risks. They felt they could move roles. So we had created like this stretch project where people could go and experiment with other roles. If you're a product manager, you want to try out engineering, you could take up a project and you can go and try that out. Similarly, people felt this sense of belongingness. What we really did was when everyone came in, we tried to create very conscious rituals where people felt like they were seen, they were heard, right? When you finish like 1 year at this company, we give you like this collectible of sorts, which is an illustration of you with something that you love. And it goes up on our wall. It's something you take away when you leave. There's a sense of you being one with the entire company, right?
Yeah.
And the last one being competence. We actually, invested in competency frameworks really early on because we wanted people to understand, what's expected of them. What does it take to really grow in my role? We tried to, ensure that they're constantly learning from each other. We made people, teach budgeting to each other, teach different kinds of, time management, all of that, really help people exchange ideas and feel like they're learning and growing. So what we realized is, as PNC and all of these things, people and culture, what we were doing is we're not creating culture, we're not owning culture, but what we're doing is we're in a way creating conditions where, all of their needs can be met and people can actually then start, behaving culture, start living culture, right? But obviously, everything was not perfect, right? In a startup, things are great, and then things are, they're just breaking and you don't even know about it. And scale really, I think, tested us to a point where we really went and reflected on a lot of things. We realized that, we did find a lot of gaps in celebrating the right people, celebrating our role models, putting them out there. I think there was a gap that we noticed, right? Like Amanda mentioned, second line, right? They really represent a lot. And when you create a second line overnight and you're not setting them up for success, somewhere you're going to find those gaps. We also found out that everything's a narrative, right? When you leave a lot of things for interpretation, there are going to be a lot of narratives that are going to be created that's not in your control. So how do you really leverage internal communication? I think that's a place that we really, seem to have wanted to focus on. So in the end of the day, clarity and consistency. These were the two things that really kind of got lost, I think, in this entire space of scale, right? So I think if you really look at it, if you could focus on really what people need, right, and what really motivates them, bring clarity to them on what they require, get clarity, ask those questions, learn from them, and really create these rituals and, practices and policies, I think we're really giving ourselves a lot more space to do better in terms of creating that stage and setting it up. So where we're really getting sharper is we're really getting stronger at how we're building our culture ambassadors, making our second line strong and really, role models for the culture, setting the right expectations, even with the second line, right? We also want to be really true to the floor. We want to be on the floor. We're not just looking at pulse surveys. We're not just looking at says. We're really sensing before we measure. We want to strengthen employee value proposition, like the needs and the motivation that people want. We really want to, tell them explicitly what's really in it when you're here and, what does it take to be here? And definitely use internal comms as a strategic lever. I think it's a big one for us and we're really pivoting on making it better. So in the end, through all this, what is people and culture in the end? We are in what I would see myself as is a catalyst and not the owner of culture at all. We listen, we codify, we design, and we nudge. We think of it like a product team where we come together, we identify issues, we learn them, and then we act on them, and then we relearn. The real muscle that we really want to do is built on the floor, like both Amanda and I said, daily on the floor. The moment PNC owns culture, I think we definitely lose it because we don't know what's really happening. So a couple of takeaways, I think anchoring on internal communication, I think really explain why. People really want to know why. I think the world is becoming smaller and people want to know what they're doing, why they're doing it. So ensure that they have those lines of communication, building the second line early and setting the right expectations, and really working like a product team where we can kind of come together, identify problems and solve, listen and co-create them. and definitely, I think, ask a lot more questions. I think one of the things I'd really love to go back and do is figure out, really how can we get people to ask questions? How do we ask questions if someone's on a PIP? Like, why are they on a PIP? If a manager is not trained, why are they not trained? I think us asking strong questions, not just about people, about the business, and tying that back, I think is something that we'd really, want to do and take forward. So I hope I kept my time, David.
Wow. My pencil, which was already blunting now, is getting down to an absolute stub. And I just this is just incredible, and such a range of calls to action for the modern people professional. It's really interesting because I come to people and culture through the background of restorative justice and mediation, and kind of with the work with Lily with coaching. And you're using the language, Maithri, of the mediator, and just listen to the feelings, give people a voice, kind of create the conditions. We talk about create conditions for dialogue. We're creating the conditions for engagement, for learning, for insight. You talk about understanding the needs. Well, of course, a large part of coaching and mediation is around understanding the needs. I just wonder, Maithri, kind of thinking about the disciplines and the capabilities that we see within the HR function. What advice and guidance might you give to HR going, yes, I aspire to that, but we are seen as, I know people don't always like to be seen as, but we're seen as the police. We hold the process. We're the custodians of the operating procedure. But making that move to this wonderful space, but it can be a bit daunting. And I just wondered what guidance and support you perhaps developed for yourself and sharing with others to help make that transition.
Yeah, I think, absolutely, David. I think when we're seen as HR on the floor, I think we're trying very hard to say, please call us people and culture, not HR. I think that's the first thing I say. I think one of the biggest things is just getting leadership buy-in. I think if I understood the question correctly, it's about, how do we see beyond just the policies and practices that we're held accountable for, right? I think when you have one of the biggest, I think, ammunitions that I think we can equip ourselves with is data. And I think selling leadership vision in terms of what you can do beyond just a policy or a practice, in having small conversations and creating small behaviors with how it was without, say, a certain behavior and how it is with a certain behavior, I think really transforms how leadership can think about the role PNC plays. Obviously, I'm so new to this whole space. It's all learning every day, and I think would learn a lot from the other leaders on this panel as well. But I think the biggest thing I've seen myself is when you have a leadership team that's ready to listen, and you have the right data to show them, you have the right narrative, to kind of put forth. I feel like, we definitely have a space beyond just our policies and benefits, for sure.
That. And it's really interesting. It kind of feeds into another part of the conversation. I think it's sort of thematically coming through in the conversations, as well as this concept of you're developing products which users are utilizing. I love that idea. And I do work with people teams around creating what we call integrated people policies, or IPPs, kind of merging some of those policies, grievance, discipline, bullying, performance management, into a single IPP, integrated people policy. And we talked a bit about the triaging built around objective decision making within that system. But when I start off working with organizations, they often say, Maithri, we buy into the idea of user feedback, but I've never seen a type form or survey monkey questionnaire that's sent to someone after they've taken out a grievance or had an allegation of bullying invested against them. So we're not listening, we're not gaining that data. But of course, when we do go out and seek that user feedback and people's experiences, not only does it give them voice, but it gives us data and information about what's really working. And I just wondered, kind of as you were closing your presentation, it really felt like a very compelling argument to start really hearing people's experience of the products. And I just wondered, kind of in your experience or your view, what some of the benefits are to the people, but also, Maithri, what are the benefits to our organizations? Is this just a moral exercise, or is this something about creating strong business performance outcomes?
I think, David, if I had to just give you an example, right? I think we all, feel like we've set up certain structures. We have certain teams delivering XYZ, and, we're all working that way. I think one thing that we did recently was we went into each function. We started talking to every function, and we really tried to ask them, what are you doing? What's the role that you're, playing? What's the work that you think you're solving for? And we asked them, okay, what are the challenges that you're facing? What are the blockers? And when we started hearing all of these interesting, challenges that they have, we really went back and we looked at, what there's so much this team is doing that they're not getting any recognition for, that they might not even have to do. It's not even their job. And we really went back and we changed up a lot of systems. We're bringing in a lot of AI intervention to help them get rid of all of the manual work, a lot of the work that they were doing. It helped us not just tackle, just base level, tick in the boxes, but it really helped us get them to go deeper, really think about their jobs very differently, and feel excited to say, oh my God, I'm so excited to come and work on this role. Because sometimes when you're spending so much time in a company doing the same thing, you lose the energy and the happiness and the excitement, and you stop thinking out of the box. So how do you kind of get that going, I think is something that we're trying to work on. So that's just a conversation. It started from a conversation. So I think that probably helps really, showcase to business as well that listening makes a huge difference.
Massive. I think you've got a big fan in Emma, whose comment has just been picked up there as well. Listening, giving people a jolly good listening to. And sometimes that means about leaning into the difficult, the discomfort, because in those challenging conversations, and sometimes there's people who've not had a positive experience, maybe an adverse experience, actually listening and understanding and seeking to understand rather than seeking to defend, I think comes through so powerfully, Maitri. And you picked up some great points there. Please do share if you're listening to us live on LinkedIn or YouTube. Please do share your thoughts, your observations. What are you doing to help make culture everybody's business? Do you have any hints and tips and ideas? And as we've been hearing as well, I think that it's experimental. This is what I love about this conversation. There is no cookie cutter. There is no formula. We're not all just following some great big plan. We're experimenting. We're trying stuff out. And I'm guessing we've talked about lots of different aspects, but I'm guessing we may sometimes have failed and things have gone wrong. How have you overcome some of those challenges and those barriers when you've met them? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they feel like? How have you addressed them? But Maitri, thank you so much. This is just wonderful. Thank you so much. What a fabulous insight, and learned so much. So thank you so much. So Patrick, hello, how are you doing?
Hey David, great. And how are you?
Yeah, Pat, I'm enjoying this conversation a lot. So I'm having a great time. International People and Culture Week, and we launched it last year. It was great fun then, but this is really rocking my people and culture boat. I'm enjoying this a lot, Patrick. So looking forward to finding out, Patrick, from yourself, how are you making culture everybody's business?
Excited. And I must say, powerful insights and presentations from colleagues. Yeah. Their backgrounds are also interesting. They also just speak about culture, artist, engineer. And interestingly, my own culture journey started from 20 feet underground when I started my first job as an underground miner. I had an encounter with a shift boss that really changed my perspectives regarding everything people, how people must be treated, environments that people must work in to be high productive. Currently, I work for an organization that is supporting the Ministry of Health here in Zambia. In digital health innovations, we are essentially scaling up a national electronic health record system called Smart Care. So over 4 years ago, when we took over this project, we would deploy the EHR to about 100 facilities per annum. Currently, we are doing more than 500 facilities per annum. And the question really is, how did we move from 100 to over 500 today? And that is what really excites me today, because it's everything about creating a high performance culture. And so, David, my approach will be to just tell you a bit about IHM and how we have moved in terms of creating that high performance culture that we wanted as an organization. So when we started, we were very clear that the culture that we had was not one that was going to deliver us the results. And the question then was, how are we going to then redefine a culture that is going to give us the results that we wanted? And obviously, there are so many models that you can think of and that you can look at when you want to shape the high performance culture. And for us, we picked one that we felt was going to resonate very well. And that was to look at our shared core values. And when we looked at our shared core values, we realized that the core values that we had as an organization at the time, they were not aligning to the desired culture, but also to the results that we wanted to get as a project. And so we redefined then our values. And we were very clear and very focused, because our values, we wanted them to speak to innovation, we wanted them to speak to creativity, and we wanted them to speak to collaboration. So we redefined our shared core values to align around that. And we needed to be very deliberate then to embed these shared values into the practices of our work. So for example, when we are hiring, we began to look out for cultural fitness. Does a person who wants to join us align to these values that we want to see in our employees? In our day-to-day operations, we needed to also practice that. And once the new values were developed and redefined, we also knew very well that we needed a leadership team that was going to drive these values in the organization. And we needed to make our leaders become intentional culture carriers. And one of the things that we began then to do was to do a lot of leadership capacity building programs. And the intention really was to establish a leadership team and equip them with the necessary skills and competences in order to create safe spaces. So we are talking about spaces that people can feel trusted. We are talking about spaces where people feel they can collaborate, but also just a psychological safety that would allow people to raise issues without feeling judged or feeling that they'll be punished. And so we began to work on our leadership team. Thereafter, we also knew very well, because we were very clear about a high performance culture, and we knew that we needed to bring and drive accountability and visibility of performance. And so we moved away from a traditional performance management system and adopted a new methodology called OKRs. I think our colleagues in HR will be aware of this. So that's the methodology that then we adopted as our performance management process. And coupled with that, we invested in a very interesting, sophisticated, automated performance management system that brought about transparency and visibility across the organization. And I can share with the team that today, with that automation, we were able to enforce conversations, we're able to enforce feedback, we're able to enforce regular feedback within the processes of the work that we did. We're actually just coming out of mid-year performance reviews, and I can comfortably confirm that almost over 100 conversations have happened within the organization between managers, supervisors, employees, and mention them. To further build up our performance muscle, we also knew that we needed to be deliberate about learning. If you want high performance culture, you need to be big on a learning culture. And so as an organization, again, we asked ourselves a question: what can we do to improve our learning culture? And we were again very deliberate about a couple of interventions. But one of them that I'll speak to was we provided LinkedIn Learning, for example, a free platform to all employees. Everybody gets a license as soon as they get in, and they are able to choose their own learning paths. But even with that, we're able also to drive our own learning that we want to see in our team. We also did conduct a competence skills gap assessment, which has then informed the skills or the gaps that are existing between amongst employees, but also at corporate level. And so even when we conduct our learning now, our learning is targeted and aligned to the strategic objectives of the organization. And these are a couple of interventions that we've been able to do as an organization to ensure that we have built a high performance culture. And if you ask me, what are the 3 takeaways I can give our global community today that are listening in? Number 1 for me is high performance culture is built by design, and it is not built by default. Interestingly, when it comes to the work of culture, whether you are intentional about building it or you are not intentional about building it, there will still be a sort of culture that will be formed. And you may as well just then begin to work on the beautiful culture that you want to see, the high performance culture that you want to see for your organization. Number 2, you need to make your performance management visible across the organization. I know so many organizations that have got fantastic performance management systems, but these are systems that sit with HR and in the files of HR. The whole organization does not have a full understanding of it, and they don't really understand what the performance management system is like for the organization. If you come to IHM today, I can tell you that you have visibility of the CEO's objectives and key results for the year, just as you may have visibility of the OKRs of our office assistant. That's how transparent our process is and how performance management has been created transparent. Lastly, high performance thrives where people feel safe, seen, and supported. You cannot talk about high performance, you cannot talk about great culture without providing the psychological safety that our people need in these organizations. And those are my 3 takeaways and how we can make culture everybody's business in any organization and in any setup. Thank you, David.
Wow. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Patrick. Really powerful. And the kind of alignment back to those values, that kind of thinking about what the culture needs to look like, that feedback, the conversations, the dialogue, and that sort of sense of intentionality. Those 3 points: design, deliberate, the visibility. I'm going to come back to the visibility. I've got a question I just wanted to ask about the CEO's OKRs being visible. I just thought that was so powerful. And being seen, being supported, and feeling safe. And I think there's been so many comments today as well, and there were yesterday, Patrick, around the importance of psychological safety and the role that people, professionals play, both in terms of our interactions, but also through the processes. But I'm a CEO, so I'm going to come on to number 2. The CEO's OKRs, objectives and key results, are visible to everybody. That seems like a small thing, but I know that's not a small thing. I know that's a big thing, because that really does shine a light on the roles and responsibilities of the chief executive officer in the organization. That level of transparency and openness, it might be usual for some organizations, but I know in a great many organizations that would really challenge leaders around that sense of they are surrounded with a little mystery and mythicism, and actually having that. And I just wondered how the CEO responds and reacts to that level of deep understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are, Patrick, and how they have found, I'm going to use the word courage. It may not feel courageous, but how did they develop the courage to put themselves out there and share with the world what they're doing in that way of transparency that you've described there? So I'm going to pick up on that one, just because I have some personal experience of this from myself.
So thanks, David, for that question. And again, if you followed what I was talking about in terms of how we were debating about building the high performance culture, we spent a lot of time around building our leadership capacity, and we were very intentional about making our leaders culture champions as well. And so, but just by that process, CEO didn't have so much option but to be that ambassador of the culture that we wanted to see. So he needed to put himself out there, put his goals out there, and be able to demonstrate how we are performing as an organization from a CEO's perspective. That way, it's also easy for everybody else to begin to follow.
And so again, just taking on that in terms of the leadership, you often think about the kind of development of culture begins to invert the leadership from autocratic command and control models towards inclusive, servant, transformational leadership principles in some organizations, perhaps moving into more feminist leadership principles. But let's focus on sort of servant and transformational leadership principles as the sort of prevailing sort of leadership models that support the kind of cultural shift that you're describing. Patrick, did having that transparency kind of require the leaders to think differently about the concept of leadership and the concept of leadership to serve rather than the leadership to tell, by virtue of it being more open? I'm just trying to get a sense of the transformation in the way we thought about your organization thought about leadership.
Yes. Again, we did also invest quite heavily in leadership development programs. Mm-hmm. We actually conducted a group coaching program for the leaders because we knew that we were going to face these challenges of resistance to accept the new thinking. And so during the process of building capacity through group coaching, we were able to move our team's thinking into the new transformational leadership perspective that I think kind of made it easy for everybody else then to begin to accept what the thinking was from the leadership and how we were envisioning things to happen. So there was a lot of deliberate effort and time and money invested in the leadership development capacity programs, including group coaching programs that we were doing.
I love that. So it doesn't surprise me. You've got the values aligning to the internal environment, the leadership's aligned to the needs of the workforce. This kind of starts to paint this incredibly powerful shift in the culture where suddenly culture is everybody's business. We're all playing our part. And I think, I guess that I majored on leadership there because I heard you mention it, but also because, let's not put too fine a point on it. People often describe leadership as either being the key driver or one of the kind of factors that kind of can cause cultures to fail, perhaps. So I think it's really powerful, Patrick, and I've learned so much there, and hopefully people have. And again, I can see you getting some great comments coming in. Patrick, I hope you'll take a moment to read through those, and we'll come back to some of the points. But Patrick, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. And Nicola is definitely last, but by no means least. Nicola, thank you for your patience. It's wonderful to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Very good, thanks. For a sunny Friday afternoon in London, which is always a treat. So I just don't know how I can almost follow what everyone else has said. I mean, I think, so much has been said, but I think, some great work being done, by everyone here, and ultimately in our industry, as you say, David, this kind of shift more towards this kind of people experience is, I think, is one of the things that keeps me interested working in this space. So a bit like Amanda, I kind of started out my career in a very different world. I was working in marketing actually for 10 years. And I think, I moved then on to running a recruitment business for the next 10 years. And one thing I found doing that is all my clients would give me the same kind of job briefs. And the only thing I felt in the end that was really making any difference between all these jobs was the culture in all these companies. And I think that's where I started to get really interested in who might fit where. I'd literally get someone come in the door and I'd think, do you know what, you'd work really well here or there. And I really started to kind of spot what it meant to have a good culture. And I remember someone saying to me, which has always really stuck in my mind, that your culture is only as good as the worst behavior that you're willing to tolerate. And I think that out of all the things I've gone on to do since then, that has really sort of rung true, I think. So I kind of, had my kind of HR sort of people journey now for the last sort of 10, 12 years. And I've been really lucky to work, some really sort of fascinating roles. And I found myself, I guess, probably the last 5, 6 years really in this niche of working with technology scale-ups and startups. And that was amazing, really helping them to kind of grow and establish a culture from the ground up, and really seeing how those first, I guess, few hires started to shape that and then scaling within that. So that was always very a kind of, I guess, driven, kind of agile group of people, and felt like it was a natural evolution a lot of the time. And then 2 years ago, I joined ECA, where I am now. And I'm just going to kind of share my screen a sec, so I can start to sort of tell you a little bit about the journey that I've had. Oops, sorry, just go back a second. Had here at ECA. And I feel like now I look back, the last 2 years I've felt that the pace that we've gone at has been phenomenal. So it's felt like a lot longer that I've been in the business, but it was a real, I guess, culture shock for me going into this business, having come from this kind of very agile startup scale-up world. And ECA at the time, they were about 50 years old and had this real strong kind of heritage brand. And one of the fairly unique things for me was that the average tenure in this business was, sorry, I think it's shared the wrong slide here. The average tenure was actually 18 and a half years. And yeah, that's generally the response that I get from other kind of people leaders when I tell them that. So I'd come from this, startup scale-up world where you're literally always working on retention strategies, and usually every 3-4 years people are perhaps thinking about moving on. So I had this real challenge, but one thing that was kind of really unique was talking to everyone. It was such a lovely place to work. People were really nice. But after a few weeks, I started to think maybe people had really traded off their career for this kind of family sort of stability. And actually, what was that really doing to serve them? And, were they really as happy and grounded as they perhaps thought that they were? And so fast forward, another sort of thing that I guess is fairly unique to this role as well, even though they were 50 years old, there'd never actually been an HR function in this company. So kind of, it was like bringing my startup world into a very established business, which has been really fascinating, exciting, challenging, as you can imagine. But really, I think we're now in a really good place. We have a great leadership team. We're on this massive kind of journey. We were bought by a private equity business 2 years ago. We have to behave like a scale up. We're innovating in technology. We're doing everything pretty much you could be doing all at once. So really exciting times. But I think where we've got to now is that we know and we recognize now that this high performance and this building culture across the business is just super important. So for this year, our sort of 5 pillars of culture, I guess, across the business are these things here, where we really want to build out that sort of capability and skills development, start to let people own their careers at ECA and make people feel that they are part of this next phase of our evolution. You can imagine kind of historically leaders, managers, very little actually in the way of skills there, just because most people had grown and evolved with the business. So we've spent the last year, 18 months, really upskilling our leadership. We've created a manager forum and community, and they come together every couple of weeks, and we've done lots of great, I guess, learning, sharing, and that seems to be working really well for us. And then this building out of our knowledge, because we have this heritage of very deep rooted in our industry, we have this real, I guess, insight and industry knowledge that we want to contain, whilst also bringing in new functional expertise into the business as well. And also this AI. So our new technology is basically, it has AI running through it, bringing in new systems and ways of doing things. It's also been a real key part of our growth strategy, and also looking at what our EVP is going forward. So I guess this culturally has been embedded across the business. It's a really key part of what we're doing in order to bring, as you say, that to life for everyone, and not just managers down, that's every individual in the company. And hopefully they feel part of that journey that we're now on. I'll just skip through some of these, because I think we've all touched on different ways that we can kind of grow and develop and bring people along the journey. So I think something that's just key here is actually the introduction of those performance conversations that didn't exist. So we now have those, and that's really starting to help to make a difference. The skills and the talent development that we've all touched on as well, and understanding what are those critical skills. And one thing that I've been tasked with specifically is looking at what are those critical skills for the future. So with the intervention of AI, not only in our business, but obviously externally, what will we look like in 2 to 3 years' time? And what are those roles that we should be mapping now to be hiring for the future proofing of the business? And then we talked a little bit about our kind of manager capability, a bit similar, to some of the other speakers. We've had these foundations of leadership programs. As I say, the manager forum is one of the key drivers across the business, so that everyone owns what we're doing, and bringing in this transparency again in our OKRs as well from top down. That's really helped for us as well. We've talked about the knowledge management, really key part of us, retaining that heritage and that, I guess, that feeling of being proud to work in our industry. And that was one of the things that we wanted to maintain, because it was a very powerful part of who we were. And again, I think we call this like our culture codes internally. It's the HR compliance piece, but actually it's really important in terms of getting that EVP right and making sure that we have the right sort of policies in place. So I think, lots to do. Our values have been reset, and you'll see here our values were set actually with where we were going, and this future proofing in mind, rather than almost where we've come from. So it's a very different business, even in sort of like the last 12 months to where we were 50 years ago. So that's, I guess, the key aspects for us of driving our culture across the business and driving that culture change. And that's where we are.
Nicola, thank you. And this is International People and Culture Week. This is a feast of people and culture. I mean, every single presentation so far has just been so powerful and so rich and so full of learning. And here you have just set out your entire strategy for the next 12 months in just the most incredible way. And I've loved every moment of that. And it just helps as well to bring it together, to make sense of it. And I've often, Nicola, thought, as we've been thinking about the transition from classic HR to people and culture, that perhaps HR has sought to have a seat at the table. And I think sometimes HR's given certain things away to get to that table. I'm not going to say necessarily sold out, but certainly in the past, I think it's done things to get a seat at the table that maybe perhaps it shouldn't have done. And I think what you're saying is it's no longer seeking to be a seat at the table. It is the table. And everyone's now coming around the table, and we don't strive to have a seat. You are that table, that space that people come to. And there's so much data and insight and learning and powerfulness that comes through that. I can't help but pick up on the AI piece, because I wrote a piece for People Management recently about the slow adoption of AI by the HR function. Because we've focused on so many areas, we haven't talked about AI. How can you have a 1.5 hour conversation without talking about AI? So let's just spend a moment if we can. Can you talk a little bit about how you see AI supporting the future of work? I'm going to tie into your question, Jeanette, about the skills-based and capabilities for the future of work. And so, Nicola, I'm going to try and kill two birds with one stone. Having a conversation about how you're bringing AI in and from the people function, but also how that's helping to equip people with the skills and capabilities that they need for the future of work, which picks up, Jeanette, to your point in the chat function. So it's just, there's so much we could have picked up on, but I just wanted to maybe open up a conversation that we hadn't had yet around those future skills.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us in the business, and probably like a lot of other people, we're really questioning, where does it come in? How do you use it? Should there be a policy? You know, what do we use it for? And I think there's really early adopters. There's people that are super excited about it. There's also then people that are holding back, wondering, does this actually apply to me?
Yeah.
But I think one thing that we can see in our business that is really showcasing, I guess, use of AI is because we are building a new technology platform, and the speed, I guess, at how that's being done and how phenomenal that is. And you know, we come from quite a niche, steady industry, and we are very much known in our world as, I guess, being the safe partner. And now we want to be the technology disruptor. And I think AI has allowed us to bring that, and to bring it very quickly. And so I think that has created, I guess, a real hub of innovation in our business, and people wanting to jump on to that almost bandwagon now and getting excited about, you know, what that could mean. So yeah, I think it's having a ripple effect, I would say.
Amazing. I've just designed recently, I'd love to share it with you, Nicola. I'd love to hear what you think. I've designed a custom GPT called Quality Conversations Coach. It's like a coach in your pocket. So when we're developing the skills and capabilities, either through learning, development programs, e-learning content, even, and I love, Patrick, the access to the LinkedIn Learning Live, but even in the moment, because the moment I need it is at 11:58 just before I go to bed. And I just want to have a good night's sleep. So actually building space and capability for people to learn then and accessing them. So I'm going to share with you, if that's okay, this custom GPT. So I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts are. And if anyone else would like to, just obviously let me know, because I'm dabbling and enjoying that. But Nicola, wow. Thank you. There's been some great questions. We're at 22 minutes past 3 here in the UK. Obviously on a global basis, I don't know quite what time it is, but we're coming to the end. What I do know is we're coming to the end of the feast of people and culture. But let's just take a little look at the chat function, because I really do want to make this as participatory as possible. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions. What I did notice was one of the people's response was just the various backgrounds: engineering, arts, craft, mining. What a fantastic array of entry points into this profession. Doesn't it just make this such a rich space with so much heritage and so many backgrounds and experiences, so diverse? I did see that comment. Let me have a look and see if there are, if you see any comments or questions in the chat function, folks, do let me know. And feel free to ask any questions that you wanted to of each other if you had any for each other. Let's see what people are saying. Gosh, there's so many comments. So there's a lot about leadership and leadership capacity and leaders as the drivers. And I just wondered if I could just throw it out and offer up any thoughts. If you've got, let's imagine we've got a leader who's on the call today, on this discussion today, really yearning for something new, but not sure how to make that first tentative step. You know, that first one. We get the big picture, we get the big aspirations, but they're kind of asking, well, where do I start? Any advice or thoughts you might give to our leader who just wants to make that first tentative step towards the journey of transformation? Do anyone have any thoughts on on that in terms of helping our leaders make that first step?
I'm just going to jump in.
Hello, Amanda. Welcome.
I should have done hand raise. But, I think as someone who has been there, so I want to really call out that, with every company I join, I feel like we're there. How do we make this first step? So you're not alone. You're not alone there. But, listening and surfacing is so important. So, even having a think tank session to really understand not what you think your culture is or not what you hope aspirationally it's going to be, but to really ground down in what is it today. And then it's a bit of a gap analysis, right, with your leaders. Listen, you want us to be XYZ, but today we're here. And what are the things that you think are going to be the most impactful in shifting those behaviors? Do we have a fall down in our processes and workflows? Do we have a lack of change management and communication, which, let's be honest, we almost always all have that, where, leaders say something because it's so ingrained and embedded in their knowingness, but your teams and your employees don't have that same knowingness. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we start that conversation? I think really it is challenging, and it can be a long game. Someone said a marathon, not a sprint. I think even more so than that, it's all the time micro iterations, you're kind of saying, okay, today or this week or this month or this quarter, we know that there's this big gap between where we want to be here culturally or behaviorally and where we are today. So here's the things we're going to try. And then we're checking in on that with leadership, because what you're also doing as the facilitator is helping them see their own blind spots. You're surfacing and uncovering blind spots, which we all have, it's there. And that I think is such a fruitful and interesting conversation to have, where you're going to get a lot of, you may not know. And even if this person said, oh, I know the first step to take, you will likely be surprised that what you thought isn't maybe what was really there. So that really critical part of listening and surfacing, asking clarifying questions, really using a lot of curiosity to discover what is really important to the team is so critical, I think.
Wow, thank you so much. Ali, are you just on mute there, Ali? Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, sorry. Just building on the points that Amanda has made, and as you're starting out on your journey, one to keep in mind is building some safe space for yourself. So, build sustainability into your ethos. Find colleagues that can help and coach you, provide you advice, and I see it all the time. People, we're all aware of people burning out. It's challenging time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yes, have ambition, have aspiration. Understand the behaviors that get you noticed, but also be inquisitive. Listen, as Amanda was talking about, but identify where there might be opportunities. But as I say, start with building some safe space for yourself.
Ali, thank you. So starting with me as well, listening to people. I think, and one of the things that I know you're too polite to say this, Amanda, I don't think, but what I heard is like, shut up and listen. Knowledge might be power, but actually listening and engaging in curiosity is even more power. And I think we need to rethink knowledge as power and status as power, and curiosity is the greatest power. I love that. So anyway, I know you didn't say shut up and listen, but that was my analysis. Anything else, Patrick, Maithri, Nicola, that you'd like to, as we're supporting our new talented leader to take their first tentative steps towards this wonderful, brave new world of people and culture?
I think that something that's really been powerful for me and helpful is building a network of peers. Because often in these businesses, and I presume that most of them similar size businesses, you can have a small team, but you are the one voice. And you might have a seat at the leadership table, but often it's really difficult to be heard. So I think having that peer network and just being able to reach out to people and just sort of saying, what would you do? How have you found this? And I think sometimes then you go back with that knowledge and you can say, I've consulted my network, and these are common themes, and I think that can sometimes really help. Also, it makes you feel like you're just not going mad sometimes. Which can happen.
And it can be lonely, can't it? It's lonely work. We've talked about loneliness before in some of the podcasts we've done through the People and Culture Association. Yeah, it can be lonely work, and I know it's a sort of, might sound a bit trite, but it can be tough at the top. And I think having that network and sharing ideas, and that no one person has the monopoly on the ideas, I think it's just a really lovely grounding kind of approach. So we're going to look after ourselves, we're going to listen to our people, we're going to surround ourselves with others who challenge us as well as supporting us. Any thoughts, Patrick and Maithri, before we wrap up today's International People and Culture Week panel?
Yeah, let me just quickly chime in. So mine was for such a leader, I think they already have what it takes. I think it takes curiosity that you must have with you, because with curiosity, then you get into discovery and exploration, and then you're going to find the answers. And when you find the answers, you begin to build. Like somebody has already said on this panel, it's a journey, it's a marathon. It cannot be achieved today, but you need to be patient with building that yourself. And over time, sure, you should be able to get what is required. Thank you.
Patrick, patience is a virtue. I love that. It's a long game as well. I think it's also about then how do we measure value along that line? And we know there's the value, shareholder value, profit, but there's stakeholder value, strategic value, the social value. Let's think about remeasuring value along the way, because then we can reestablish and reimagine that long journey, not just chasing the profit, which is sometimes the challenge, of course, for a great many leaders, reevaluating value to then deliver patience. Maithri, it appears that you have the final word on today's International People and Culture Week panel. Any thoughts for our leader as we're moving into their stage of their career?
I think just having that thought, like, the rest of the panel mentioned, I think it's just great. It's a great start. I think what we always see is there's always a thought and there's always an intent, but following through on it and acting, to make it actually work. I think that would be something, I'd really say, if we could create that together, co-create that together, like Patrick said, create the vision and really make them live what it can look like when you actually come through and you create something beautiful. I think creating that vision together at the beginning so you can actually go through with the entire process, which is going to be so tough. I think that would be something I'd definitely look at.
You just said something there which really was very profound and impactful for me, is live what you want it to look like.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, everything you said was bad, but wow, live what you want it to look like. I think it's so powerful. That's about really grounding us, walking that talk and being the change we want to be. And also giving us agency as leaders. We're not passive recipients. None of us are passive recipients. We are here and we can shape that through our behaviors, our interactions, the way we deliver the values, the way we connect with each other. Honestly, I thought yesterday was good and it was, but today's fantastic. Well, another incredible journey, a feast of people and culture. I'm going to say massive thank you, Maithri, for your contribution. Nicola, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that strategic framework as well. And he had a lovely comment there about the support for the organisation. Nicola, do look at the comments if you get a chance. Patrick, thank you so much. And Patrick, thank you for sharing the event so widely as well. It's very much appreciated. I really enjoyed listening to those 3 steps as well. Thank you. Amanda, thanks for sharing the art and the craft of culture and helping us to understand what that looks like. And Ali, that journey that you've had, and also the great benefit, the impact that you've had in your organisation, coming in at a tough time and bringing that person-centred, purposeful, values-based approach into the work and the impact that it's had. Lily, for shining a light on the power of coaching. Thank you so much, Lily. I know you're always happy to share thoughts and insights and talk about coaching. And one thing I've got to know about you, Lily, is you just love talking about coaching, and I love talking with you about coaching. So there's a great thing going on there. And Jonathan, finally, happy birthday again. I hope you have a wonderful birthday weekend and enjoy it.
The best gift I think I could have asked for. So thank you so much for a fantastic power-packed session. If I can just quickly say in 20 seconds, it felt like Maithri kind of gave us a cue for something to do in the future. She spoke about coming together and building your people and culture strategy. I think today's panel is all about taking that courage to build that blueprint. It starts with a plan, and all of you, all the speakers shared that you had a plan before you kick-started things. Make sure you have the right stakeholders on board, right representation out there, and then go ahead and execute it. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to get that feedback and move on. I think there's something cooking there. There's something we got to put into our pipe now and start smoking, because yeah, it's exciting to see what we can do coming together as a team. But Lily, I just want to quickly hand it over to you for 30 seconds before we say goodbye.
Well, thank you so much for what a fantastic conversation, and thank you all the speakers and panel for just all that amazing insight, and from all different areas and from different directions. I think that's what makes this conversation so interesting. And I think, you know, I'll keep it really short, but you know, the kind of weight on leadership and high performance and culture change. If anyone that's watching is kind of wondering, how do I get started with this? How do I take first steps? Do feel free to contact TCM. We really have a service and a solution for everything and anything. So, and we work very collectively together. So do feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll just happily have a chat with you and talk about your objectives. And we love to do that. So feel free to keep in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone's time, and have a fantastic weekend, all of you.
Well done, Lily. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much. Speak again soon. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, by the way, if you've joined us on LinkedIn as well.